Gateway Center for Excellence in Rural Health. On behalf of the board, I'd like to welcome our invited panelists and attendees to this panel discussion. Thanks to Jay, Vice President, and our admin lead, Sarah Versteeg. They've been very helpful with tech support to ensure that our 2020 speaker series could continue virtually. Gateway would also like to acknowledge the sponsors for the speaker series, Town of Goderich and Larry Otten Contracting. I hope you've all had a chance to view the sequel documentary, Next Step, Screenagers Next Step, Uncovering Skills in Stress Resilience, and I hope you found it to be informative and enlightening. Those preteen, adolescent years can be anything but easy. Peer pressure, hormones, growth spurts, and stress to do well academically are just a few challenges. But today's teens also need guidance in navigating social media safety and potentially dealing with the heightened anxiety from the pandemic. Parents, grandparents, and educators need support systems and effective strategies to help kids and teens develop those crucial skills to manage emotional challenges like stress, anxiety, and depression. So thanks for joining us to continue that conversation. And it's my pleasure to introduce the 5 panel members this evening. Cathy Jo Thom. If you could wave, Cathy, so everybody knows who you are. Cathy Jo Thom, she's a teacher and guidance counselor at Goderich District Collegiate Institute. She's trained in mental health first aid, which was developed by the Mental Health Commission of Canada to improve mental health strategies, provide skills and knowledge to help people better manage, first of all, recognize and manage mental health problems in themselves or a family member or a friend or a colleague. Dr. Peter Dixon, welcome. He is a psychiatrist in Perth County. He's worked at the Stratford General Hospital and with Huron Perth Public Health, in addition to volunteering with the Mental Health Association. And Kyla Devereaux, she's a professional working mom with 2 kids, aged 11 and 8. Kyla, her husband, and the kids are a very busy family with 2 working parents and kids who are active in many sports. In 2019, Kyla's son experienced anxiety while beginning grade 5. She joins us here tonight to share some of her insight into the journey they had building the skills for resiliency to manage and overcome challenges with anxiety. Terri Sparling is the Chief Executive Officer at the Huron Perth Center for Children and Youth. It's the lead agency for child and youth mental health in 2 counties. Our moderator this evening is Tanya MacIntyre. She's a facilitator who specializes in self-management and recovery training. So a big thank you to Cathy Jo, Terri, Kyla, Tanya, and Peter for participating in this panel discussion. Each of you has an important role in supporting families in our communities, and Gateway is so pleased to be collaborating with you on this initiative. So I'll turn it over to Tanya now for opening comments from each panel member. Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you so much, Nancy, and thanks to Gateway for spearheading this and sponsoring it and getting me involved. I really appreciate it. It's an important dialogue, and I'm glad we're having it. As Nancy mentioned, I'm a facilitator with SMART, Self-Management and Recovery Training. I have been on my own mental health recovery journey from drugs, alcohol, and other things since 2009. And I'm a big fan of cognitive behavioral therapy, which Smart Recovery uses as part of their tools and techniques in recovery, helping people to self-manage their mental health and addictive behaviors. So this really touches my heart greatly because I deal with people struggling and self-medicating mental health issues every day. And you know, we all know that resources are spread thin, and people are struggling with mental health issues, and because there are no resources, they are self-medicating, and more often than not now dying from overdose. Suicides are also at an all-time high. Dr. Brené Brown was recently quoted as saying she's a research professor from the United States and a best-selling author. And she said something again that resonated with me. She said, we're now the most stressed, depressed, overweight, over-medicated population in history. And I think there's a reason for that. I mean, I was a journalist also for a couple of decades, and I started to recognize that there's an agenda of mainstream media, and that is to perpetuate the FUD factor, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So when I had my aha moment and could no longer align my conscience with my vocation, I laughed. And I encourage everybody just to be the gatekeeper of your mind. You know, I jokingly say, take the diet that really works, a media fast. Don't watch, read, or listen to news and feel how much your life improves. And when I say that to people, you know, they say, oh, Tanya, yeah, sure, good for you. You can just stick your head in the sand and live in la land. And that's not what I'm suggesting at all. I'm suggesting that you be selective with what you're absorbing into your mind. You know, we're now inundated, 3,000 advertising messages a day we're exposed to. That's more than our parents saw in a lifetime. And we are screening them daily. I mean, we're spending a third of our lives at least in front of a screen, right? So, I mean, the challenges of parenting children in this era, I cannot imagine. And that's a great segue to go to Kyla, because Kyla, I find your story fascinating. Your kids are now, what, 11 and 8. And Logan had some challenges around 2019, going into grade 5, you know, experiencing anxiety. And, you know, I'm sure as a family, like every family with preteens, you're struggling with trying to get them to manage their screen time in a healthy way, that's quite a challenge. How you doing there, Kyla?
Thanks, Tanya. Good evening, everyone. So yes, we mentioned that our son Logan last year had some anxiety seemingly come out of nowhere in the first week of school. And, you know, it took us by surprise, and, you know, we, you know, attacked it right away. And we've really had a lot of great growth in the last year, and are happy to share that we're in a much better place. And we worked with tons of people who were involved, and we've happy to come out the other side, knowing that we're always still going to have anxiety, because everyone has anxiety, but we definitely now have the skill set to manage it. And I recall when I sat down last year with our VP, and she said, well, Logan may just be having a difficult year. And I thought, are you kidding? A year? I mean, I'm looking for this to be over in 3 weeks, you know, in terms of wanting to not go to school. And it was a year. And COVID silver linings for us, the slowing down of the fast pace of our family, and I think the home time, we are in a great spot. So I'm happy to chat with the strategies we went through, and the documentary, you know, while the kids are still younger, 11 and 8, and not the screenagers, we're not there to phones yet, but we definitely have the screens. And the kids would, you know, they love any time that they get on the screens. And it's amazing how you say, oh, you can watch it for 30 minutes and then an hour goes by. So you have to really be aware and manage that. And so we learned a lot from the documentary, and I look forward to applying what we've learned.
Excellent. I have a nephew with special needs. So he has Williams syndrome. He's biologically 31, mentally he's 5. And he got an iPad one year for Christmas, and he loves to watch YouTube. So as you know, if you've watched YouTube and you're not paying the premium, you have to opt out of the commercial after 15 seconds. But more often than not now, I notice that you actually have to sit through a 15 or 30-second commercial before you can even view it. There's no skipping anymore. You have to look at it. And after just 1 hour, so again, my sister is a time on screen mom. So she says, okay, Tyler, you've got 1 hour, and she'll set the timer. And then when the buzzer goes, he knows it's time to turn it in. And after just 1 hour of being exposed to YouTube and the advertising messages, he came upstairs to announce that he had to lose weight and remove all the hair from his chest. 1 hour, right? So that's what our 5-year-old kids are absorbing. It's scary stuff. Thanks very much, Kyla. We're going to talk more about your experience and the strategies that you use in these challenges. Terri, you could probably write a book. Are you writing that book? Because I'd like to read it.
Well, right now I'm living the book, but at some point, perhaps I'll write a book. I've been the CEO of Huron Perth Center since 1997. We're an organization that's been we began in Huron County in 1977. I would say there's been a huge change over time in terms of children's mental health, both in terms of government attention, a social policy that actually has offered a policy, because prior to 2011, we didn't have one. And there's been huge growth, but for the most part, people oftentimes associate Huron Perth Center with a waiting list. And I am here to say that for 5 years, we've not had the waiting list that we've actually been famous for. We've been able to reorganize services because of system transformation work and policy work. And one of the biggest challenges is helping people understand that we're here along with other community partners. Mental health services are not funded by one ministry, so that's what complicates understanding the system. There are many streams of funding that fund parts of, and it requires communities to figure out how to pull that together. And that's my role as a lead agency with Huron Perth Center, is to try and help pull together all of the resources that are playing vital roles. So Peter, I'll be interested to talk to you more. We work closely with family health teams, schools, children's aid, police, youth justice, lots of different players. But really, as a parent, Kyla, I'm thinking about you, and I too have had kids that have needed services. When you need service, your brain's a little hijacked and you can't even figure out what the hell to do. And so it's not like there's one path, one number. There are one numbers to call, and that would get you there, but people don't generally know that at the time that they're looking. So I'm hoping tonight's an opportunity to highlight there's many roads into the services. And then I think you asked us to reflect a little bit about what do we hear from the documentary. Oh man, there were so many relevant things in that documentary. I'm grateful that our kids grew up prior to the level of pressure that kids have now in terms of social media and technology. But I would say we are sitting with a huge challenge in that everything's instant. And emotional regulation is not an instant skill. And the amount of information that kids are exposed to through screens is overwhelming. So it's not that we should stop technology, but we have to meter it somehow. And then I really loved the part of the documentary that talked about, and parents can't take control. Oh man, when your kid's struggling, Kyla, do you not want to take control? And your kids are a little younger. Mine were teenagers at the point that they struggled. And so there is this delicate balance of being present, but not taking away their power. And that is bloody hard. And that's as a two-parent family with some skills. God help families that are led by a single parent mom or dad that's just busting their butt to just try and do their job and don't have the energy to do more, and then their child needs them. So I really shout out to parents for the challenges they've got. And we have a challenge to balance the value of technology against the danger of technology.
Yes, well put. Thanks very much, Terri. Cathy Jo, as a guidance counselor in school and teaching, wowza. I used to volunteer for a program called Teen Esteem, and actually we brought Teen Esteem to Perth County, and I think it's still going there. Waterloo region lost it, but yeah, Perth County is still enjoying that. So it's a bunch of professional women would volunteer our time, and we go spend our lunch hours with teenagers in grade 7, 8 to talk about things that were relevant to their life, like focus on the future, peer pressure, hormones, and all that stuff. And I got to tell you, 1 hour a week for 13 weeks in school, teachers just don't get paid anywhere near enough. So what you guys do is nothing short of extraordinary. I mean, I always say parents have the most important job in the world. Teachers have definitely the second most important job in the world. So thank you for what you do, Cathy Jo. And can you just tell us maybe what what kind of popped out at you about Screenagers.
Yeah, for sure. So as you said, I'm a teacher at GDCI, guidance counselor. It's funny, when I started in guidance, I was so excited to go into it, but I was also really, really scared to go into it. And one of the first opportunities I had is the board set up the mental health first aid instruction course. And I jumped on it because I was really looking for a bag of tricks. I wanted to know what to do when kids came into me and told me they were in distress or troubled. And, you know, that's kind of what I was looking for. And it was interesting. The best part of the course was telling me, you know, it's all about having comfortable conversations with students, about just, you know, telling them to share their experiences, not necessarily giving them advice, but just hearing their stories and helping them navigate that. I think in guidance, one of the best things is knowing we have so many great community partners. In our school setting, we've got great organizations such as Huron Perth Center, Safe Homes, Choices for Change. So I really look at myself as a first responder. Kids come to me and I tell them I don't have all the answers, but you know what, I can try to help you navigate the system and find the person that you need to give you the support that you need. So that's been really, really encouraging for me, and, you know, teaching me that I don't need to have the answers, but just navigating the system is a big part of that. I think one of the parts of the videos that I most identified with was the one section where the mother was kind of watching her daughter do the little puzzle piece. And it talked about how, you know, as mothers, we kind of want to jump in and solve problems. And I was like, oh, I'm totally that mother. You know, I'm the one that wants to help them navigate things and kind of fix it for them, which, you know, it kind of ups the stress in the kids, where really just sitting back and letting them kind of solve things for themselves helps them navigate it and kind of build up resiliency. And I think that's, you know, something that even myself, working through that kind of thing and letting kids solve their own problems was a big part. So that was kind of an aha moment for me, I would say, watching the video. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting.
Excellent. I was raised by a single father.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to jokingly call him philosopher dad, because anytime me and my baby sister would go to him with a problem, he would just spit out a line of philosophy, hoping that that would solve the problem. And I remember when I had complained about what was happening at school with some girls who were bullying me, and I come home crying and I said, Daddy, why are those girls being so mean to me? And he hugged me. He said, oh, sweetheart, don't worry. The mills of the gods grind slowly, but exceedingly fine. And I'm thinking, I was like 10 at the time, and I'm thinking, I don't know what that means, but you know, I guess it's okay. But it stayed with me for a lifetime. So, you know, with just all of the things that are happening, that was like many, many years ago when I was going to elementary school. But now I can't even imagine the peer pressure, because, you know, even with us growing up in the 70s, my friends and I, we'd be comparing fashion magazine pictures, right? But you had to actually kind of work to get those pictures, right? And you would go to each other's houses, bedrooms to look at the, you know, you got that issue, let's go get it. And that comparing, right? Mm-hmm. Now, nobody was talking about how all of these images were totally unattainable, right? Because they represented less than 1% of the female population. And now it's even worse with photoshopping and airbrushing and all that stuff. I talked to young men who are addicted to porn in their 20s, when their brains are still developing. And, you know, when I say, when were you first exposed to pornography? And some of them say 10, prepubescent. Like, I can't even imagine. My husband and I talk about that. And he said, oh, wow. He said, I remember the first nude pictures that we saw as kids, and we were in the playground sneaking looks at that somebody had gotten some photos or something, right? And it was, if you saw a pair of boobies, it was like, oh, look at that. And everybody was passing it around. But now the images are so graphic. I just can't even imagine what kids are going through. So as parents, my heart just goes out to you so much, and I'm so grateful that you're participating in this and giving us some feedback and offering some strategies. Thank you. Dr. Peter Dixon, great to have you here. I have to say, Dr. Dixon, I only just got your bio, but I did a very cursory read as people were talking, and I just love that the first thing that I saw, what jumped out at the page, what I love, right? It's the confirmation bias that we look for, cognitive behavioral therapy, and it was down at the end of the email, and that's like, whoo, it just jumped right out at me. So, Dr. Dixon, would you like, have you had time to look at the documentaries?
Yeah, I watched it earlier today.
Excellent. And what kind of hopped off the screen for you?
There were a few things that I really, well, the whole thing was great. I wrote a few things down. I kind of scattered thoughts, but I thought I'd share a few things that really were jumped out at me. Someone was talking, one of the experts was talking about identifying your own feelings. And I think that that's so important, developing insight and having a language around that. Because I think a lot of the time it's people don't know how to describe their own feelings or have a relationship with anxiety that's unhealthy. And I think, as was said earlier, anxiety is a phenomenon that we all experience. It's not a pathological thing on its own. I see it that it's when your relationship with anxiety is such that it leads to avoidance and it leads to depression. And it's finding a way, such as through CBT or exposure therapy, as was mentioned in the video, to transform your relationship with anxiety and develop that insight and allow it to exist. Another thing that was another thing that someone mentioned in the movie was the cognitive effort of suppressing emotions. And I think people have seen a lot of, you see all the time in sort of pop psychology about turning a negative thought into a positive thought. And in reality, it doesn't really work that way. I think we all have negative thoughts that exist there, that are there to protect us. But I think the trick is being selective to which thoughts you fuse with, which ones you decide are going to let guide your actions. And I think too many people kind of live a little bit on autopilot in a way, and maybe use their anxiety as a way to, as a meter to tell them what to do and what not to do. It's like a radar, and they go, well, when I do this, I feel anxiety, so obviously I better back off, I better stop. But we know that doesn't lead to happiness, that doesn't lead to you reaching your goals and living by your values. So that's I guess what I wanted to say is that I think the most valuable thing that you can do in something like CBT is to try to transform your relationship with anxiety, rather than focusing on suppressing it or pushing it away or covering it up with something that you see as more positive.
Yes, very good point. And that's what what I love about Smart Recovery is that they teach you the tools, techniques you need to manage those negative thought patterns, right? Because I mean, they're never going away. We've got that negative narrative running in a loop in our head. It never shuts up. So learning to navigate that and manage that without self-medicating it is what I specialize in. And I don't get a lot of time to talk to teenagers anymore. I used to. As a driving instructor, I used to love talking to the kids as I was teaching them to drive, but I don't have that enjoyment anymore. So I feel like I'm kind of at a touch, because I think teenagers can give us a great deal of insight of how we should be living our life, right? Because they are observing us. We are their models. And what popped out for me on the second one, the next chapter, the second part of the documentary series, was that the younger kids who were interviewed, they want to learn from the older kids, right? It's their peer, like their older peers. They're really looking to model that behavior, which is really important. And me and my friends, that's what we did too, right? You were always looking at, when you were 12, you were looking at the 15-year-olds thinking, oh, I can't wait to be like that and wear that. And kids, I think that's kind of wired in their DNA, right? We're always looking 2-3 years ahead of us for those modeling behaviors.
Which is great, as long as the behaviors that they're modeling after are in fact healthy and adaptive.
Exactly, yeah. Do we have any other parents who would like to jump out? I see Gwen Devereaux. Would you like to check in with us, Gwen? about your experience with Screenagers. Do you want to share something? Am I seeing everybody? We've got 13 participants, but I'm only seeing, the gallery view, I'm only seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and Nancy. And
thanks.
Jay in Gateway and Gwen.
Thanks, Tanya. It's Gwen here.
Oh,
I just wanted to say that in watching, and you have an excellent panel there, but in watching the video, I thought it was so amazing, and I'm so disappointed that we were not able to reach so many more, because it was impactful, and it could be. It wasn't just, to me, it wasn't just about teenagers. I could see how it could be transferred to adults too, dealing with all the same issues, and with COVID and all the screen time, because people now are having more screen time than ever. I am disappointed that we didn't get thousands online tonight. That's all. And I don't know how we can reach more, because I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, I agree with you, Gwen. And I'm grateful that Nancy invited me in to this group. And Nancy learned about Screenagers through Lorena McKennett in Stratford. So it's a ripple effect that will, that'll gain momentum for sure. I think once word gets out, and the schools start talking more about it with their students, and maybe more teachers will show it if it becomes more available, because I think the screening of it might be limited too. I'm not really sure why the producers opted for this way of promoting the documentary, to actually charge the screening fee. Not sure about that strategy, but maybe it'll appear in more schools. It'd be nice to see it part of the curriculum, actually. It'd be good to create that dialogue.
We have a little fledgling family advisory committee that we've been trying to develop for the last couple of years for the 2-county area. So it's not a Huron Perth Center thing, although Huron Perth Center has supported it. And recently our little parent advisory did a survey, and they got over 200 parents to respond. And so we've actually got meetings set with 30 of those parents who have put their hand up to say they'd like to be a part in some way. And we've got a way to reach back to those who responded. So I wonder whether or not there's an opportunity for us to kind of use tonight as a bit of a test, because the content was awesome. Mm-hmm. And, frankly, I thought you got a great selection of people. Maybe on a different time you might have added other people, doesn't matter. You've got a range, you've got a parent view, you've got school view, Peter being here, my perspective on resources. There may be another way for us to reach in and reach back out to reach those parents. I don't want us to just get discouraged by the numbers. I think that you're doing the right thing. It's the right thing to happen. It's just getting it out there.
Excellent. Yes, I think it's just gonna, like I said, it's a ripple effect. It'll gain some momentum. Any other parents or anybody who's viewed the documentary who would like to give us your feedback? We'd love to hear from you. Or you can put something in the chat box. I've got the chat box over here that I can read if you have any questions. Hi, Jay.
Hi. So yeah, as a parent with 3 kids that are getting to the teen years, I know our oldest is turning 10 soon. And I'm thinking more about the future years that we're coming up on. And I can remember coming home from school and my mom would ask me, how was school? And I'd say, fine. How are you doing today? I'm good. And just short 1-word answers. And in Screenagers, it was one of the things that I found more helpful was, instead of offering solutions to problems, ask more questions. And so I'd like to know what kinds of questions that, from the experts, the panelists here, what kinds of questions do you find help to open up the conversation a little more beyond the 1-word answers?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Kyla.
Kyla.
I'll raise my hand. One of the things I saw or read that we implemented last year was dinner conversation and wrapping the day with what was your high, what was your low, and what was your learning. So it's better than how was your day? Fine. But and we would go around the table and, you know, this was my high. And some days the kids say, oh, I didn't have a low today. I can't think of one, which is amazing.
Wow.
Or a low could be something simple, or it could be a major one. And then what was your learning? And when we have people over for dinner, they also have to participate in the conversation. And it really makes for lively dinner discussion, and you hear lots of feelings. So that would be one of the questions that I share to generate conversation, in addition to tell me more, but high, low, and learning of the day.
I like that. Yeah. I use what was the highlight of your day with my nephew, and that tends to.
Yeah.
It's normally food with him though.
Kyla and I'm sorry I missed. Is it Jamie who just spoke?
Jay.
Jay.
Yeah.
Both of you have kids at a ripe age that like do not underestimate the power of your influence right now, because it does wane a little when they get a little older. So now the work you're doing and the work you've already done, Kyla, is tremendously powerful. It will lay groundwork that even if they need to go silent, then maybe your role isn't so much trying to get them to tell you something as much as make sure they've got other positive support people in their life. I'm thinking, Cathy Jo, that's where oftentimes high school guidance plays a role, where parents aren't cool anymore, or great aunt, uncles and aunts, neighbors, people that are outside the family, because it's just not cool to tell your parents anymore. So you're laying great groundwork because they're young, but just there is a time that isn't as cool to talk to your kids. I still remember our youngest saying, I can't talk to you. You're just talking to me like a client. It's like, no, actually, honey, you don't understand. I'm actually talking to you like I would if you were my friend. But I appreciate that you think because I'm a counselor, I can't be anything else. So sometimes we have to be willing to let other people play that role when it gets tougher if they're older.
Mm-hmm. I would say too, I mean, in the past, we've had some amazing child and youth workers that came in from Huron Perth Center and all over. One of the things I've learned from one of those people was, she would always say, when she would approach a student, she would say, you know what, I want to talk to you. I'd like you to commit to coming to see me 3 times. You know, the first time it's kind of just getting to know you, opening up the door, getting some conversation going. And a lot of times their back was up. They didn't have anything going on. They didn't want to talk to anybody. Second time, you know, might be get a little bit more out of them. And by the third time, 9 times out of 10, they were really, really hooked, and they were comfortable coming in, and they didn't feel, you know, that it was that unusual. It was just like coming to talk to a friend at that point. And I think the other thing I've learned too is just being a more active listener, sitting back, hearing what they have to say, being comfortable with wait times, not, you know, having them kind of like tell us right away, let them time, give them time to process, because it takes teenagers time to really think about what they want to say. Maybe they're just not feeling like talking that day, but 9 times out of 10, I would find that if there's really stuff going on, if you develop that rapport with them, they'll come back to you and they'll tell you when it's the right time for them.
Yeah, definitely. I think you hit on something there that kind of jumped out on me, with me, is when there was a stress measurement done with parents helping, and their stress levels reduced when they helped the child through something. At the same time, the child's stress levels increased. So that was a very interesting paradigm. It's like, wow. Because, you know, as parents, I'm sure that's what you want to do, right? You want to wave a magic wand and make everything great. Everybody be happy now, right? Let's make that project perfect. But actually that may lower your stress as a parent, but it raises the stress of kids. I was really interested to learn that. I had no idea.
So truly trying to manage your own anxiety will in effect manage your child's anxiety. Because that's what it is, right? It's you're feeling anxious because of the need to swoop in and fix things and give your child the best chance. But that experiment shows us that that's that's a skill to be worked on, is to try to cope with not being able to, or not swooping and not fixing things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Bonnie has asked, how does a parent know when it's time to seek support from a professional? Great question, Bonnie. So Kyla, maybe you could
Sure.
experience
How do I know? Well, I was at a loss. We went to the doctor right away because my son, he felt that he was having a heart attack. He was feeling panicky, and so I knew that that was anxiety. And I said, okay, well, let's, the second day, the third day, I said, okay, let's go. And so, you know, our family doctor listened to his heart and said, it's a healthy heart and you're fine. And so he listened to her because it wasn't mom saying you're fine. And so we engaged that. And then, you know, when he was still nervous, I called to get in with a social worker because there was a wait list for the psychologist. So I think in the second week of school last year, we went to the reach out center here and just got in right away on their drop-in Tuesdays.
Oh, that would be Huron Perth Center. Yeah.
That's you.
That's us. Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
we went there and there was a gentleman named Dallas, and he, you know, Logan was first nervous to open up to a stranger, and but, you know, I helped verbalize, and Dallas did a really good job of giving an analogy that Logan could relate to. You know, here's the anxiety. You want to go this way or that way, but you got to go through it, and you've got to go to school. You can't avoid it, otherwise the anxiety will get the better of you, and then it makes it worse. So we just continue to push with that, and so then we got some psychology help. They recommended also visiting a naturopath for, you know, more of a holistic view. And we looked at diet. I bought a salt lamp. I turned off the Wi-Fi at night. We knew we needed some help on how strategies to manage. And thankfully there was lots of people to ask and resources here.
So maybe if I can tag on that, and Kyla, no, it wasn't us because I don't recognize Dallas as a staff member, but I'm glad that was helpful. I think one of the keys is when a parent notices, they need to be able to know where to go. And whether you go to your doctor or whether you talk to someone at the school or whether you know to call the Huron Perth Center or you've got another relationship or you've got an EAP, like all of those paths will ultimately get you places. Sometimes it creates extra stops and no one's looking for extra, like you're looking to get to the end, right? So I think it's important for you to know that services are working really hard to be coordinated, but that there isn't just one path. And so you found a great path in. I think there are parents like you who are astute and are prepared to pick up the phone and can act. I think it's important for us to recognize that some kids actually don't have those same advocates in their own family. And so that's not a disrespectful thing to the parent. Sometimes they are so overwhelmed with their own adult mental health or addictions or poverty or family violence or just, you know, many, many adult issues that they simply they don't even notice. So I would say that's where we really rely on teachers. And whoever said, you know, teachers aren't paid enough and the amazing job they do, really the eyes that teachers offer. We've often said the best diagnostic of kids who are going to struggle is ask a kindergarten teacher. Kindergarten teacher will tell you who is likely to experience problems down the way because you can see it early on. So I think we must remember that sometimes kids get to help not because the parent noticed, but because the parent didn't. And fortunately, there are other people out there like community members that will then try and pave the way to get them to services. And I think that's important to note too.
Yeah, I agree, Terri. Teachers are a fabulous resource. If it wasn't for my grade 10 geography teacher, I probably wouldn't have graduated high school. And, you know, I often tell people I work with an advocacy group against poverty, anti-poverty movements, and to try to deal with the lack of affordable housing and the growing homelessness issue. And it was nothing nothing short of just luck and circumstances that prevented me from being one of those people you see with a cardboard sign bumming money at stoplights and being homeless. I mean, it's just circumstances. It could have just as easily happened to me. And I think as a society, it's easy for us to perpetuate the stigma that has been created around addiction. And I often tell the story about clinicians are finally starting to wake up to how they're using their language around addictions. And I tell story to my recovery groups all the time about when a patient comes in unconscious, their only introduction to the clinicians is a piece of paper. And that piece of paper will have a description of you on it. And if you are described as a substance abuser, then immediately the clinicians consider that you are culpable for your actions and you deserve punitive results or repercussions, whereby that same patient, if they are introduced to you as having a substance use disorder, that those same clinicians will then say, oh, well, this is treatable with medication and therapy. It's just, it's how we're using the language. And I think we need to just be more cognizant of that so we can help alleviate all the stigmas that are.
Tanya, you remind me of a part of the video that talked about the over-reliance on social media and the fact that they talked about that in spite of the fact that it didn't help, that it doesn't stop them from still relying on social media to feel better. So they go to social media hoping that it's going to be an answer. And then they go scroll through their Instagram or whatever, all the various things they're doing, and they don't feel any better. But nothing in that, I mean, any other thing we might do might cause us to say, well, that was bad. I'm not going to try that again. But it's such a great example of whether you're talking about alcohol, drugs, social media, food, not food, like whatever is the thing that you're relying on, it's such a common thing that people rely on a strategy, but it's not necessarily the one that helps them anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I agree. I'd say all the same mechanisms are in place for the screen addiction as like gambling addiction, for example. It's you're sort of chasing that dopamine release. Whether it's getting likes on your, I don't know, getting followed or something of that nature, right? It's you're chasing that, and you might get 100 negatives to 1 positive, but there's something about that little shot of dopamine that's keeping you going, keeping you searching for it. More often than not, you lose, just like gambling. Mm-hmm. But when you win, it does something powerful to us, and. So that was one of the lines that I wrote down here too, that the social media makes me feel worse, but I do it anyway. So I completely agree, Terri.
And that's how addictions work, right? It's addictions are something that we continue to do in spite of the negative consequences.
Well, and really, let's just even soften the language a little, because a lot of people would say, well, that's not me. But if we just talk about maladaptive patterns that don't actually meet the need, we're all guilty of doing things that don't necessarily help us, but we might still sometimes do them. So I saw that Bonnie's wondering whether, Peter, you might talk a little bit more about CBT.
Cognitive behavior therapy is how to be used to screen time addictions. Sure. And I'm happy for Tanya to jump in too. But I see cognitive behavioral therapy is about recognizing thought patterns and developing insights as to what your thoughts are, how your thoughts are making you feel, and how your thoughts are making you act. And when you take the time to analyze, you can pick any thought, or you can pick an instance, such as maybe you pass someone by in the hallway and they don't say hi to you. So what's your first thought? Most people will say, oh, I must have done something. Maybe I offended them in some way. And so then a cognitive behavioral process would go through, why am I feeling that way? How's it making me feel? what are the likely outcomes, what are the likely actions, and kind of just picking that apart. And it doesn't always have to be so taxing cognitively. You don't have to do this with every action that you do. But I think going through the exercise can help you realize patterns. And when you look at why someone might be unhappy or have something that they do that doesn't make them happy, maybe going through the exercise will have them realize that maybe what they're doing is providing short-term happiness, but not long-term happiness. It's maybe this action is keeping me in this comfortable zone that my anxiety is not peaking, I'm not being challenged, and that's why I'm doing it. But at the same time, when I look back and when I look into the future, maybe I'm not going to be happy if I keep living this way. And that's sort of how I see things. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Tanya, or anyone else on CBT?
On so Smart Recovery they have different techniques and tools to promote cognitive behavioral therapy. And a couple of my favorites are the HOV, which is a hierarchy of values, and the CBA, the cost benefit analysis. And it's interesting how there's always these divides, right? You'll get somebody who said, or a group that says, oh yeah, I love the HOV and it motivates me and it really helps me develop and maintain my motivation to abstain. And then other people say, oh no, I hate that HOV. I like the CBA, right? So you gravitate to what works for you, or again, there's the confirmation bias that we all, if it's going to give us an easier, softer way, maybe we gravitate toward that as well. But part of what I love about the hierarchy of values is that it asks 3 important questions that I suggest everybody does every day. Ask, what do I want? What am I doing about it? And then how do I feel about what I'm doing about it? Mm-hmm. So these things are helpful because the answers can change every day. And if you're really honest about it, it can help you get some clarity as you do that kind of inward retrospection, that inward journey that most of us are reluctant to take. So it helps me a lot. I ask and answer them every day because a lot of times the answers do change, but it also makes me accountable for what I am doing about it and how do I feel about what I'm doing about it. So I often share kind of a sample idea. If you say, I want to be an entrepreneur because I want more autonomy and more time flexibility, maybe more money, what am I doing about it? Well, I'm binge watching Netflix and smoking pot all day. Well, how do I feel about what I'm doing? Well, obviously not very good because my behavior doesn't match what I say I want. So I'm not being honest with myself. What's preventing me from being honest with myself? What can I change to start moving me in the direction of what I say I want? So it's a really good accountability factor. It helps me anyway. But again, when people say, no, that doesn't work for me. And I'm thinking, well, don't cop out on it then. Find something that does work for you because we're all different and we're all going to find different things that work for us. So just keep looking for it.
I think the other thing you really highlight, Tanya, is that the power of being able to take apart, you might not ever be a cognitive behavioral therapist, but you can master the concepts of the power of thought, emotions, behavior, and you could be a parent and help with that. You can be a guidance counselor and help with that. You can be a formal therapist. It can be self-help. You can do reading. You can have a friend that has an understanding that's going to listen. There's such valuable ways that we can use those concepts that it doesn't have to be we all line up to wait to see formal therapy. There's lots of ways that people can gain insight into their behavior and make changes. You mentioned that actually it was a teacher that had the biggest impact on your life. Oftentimes when you ask people that question, they oftentimes will say it was a teacher or a family member or, someone close to their family in some way that gave them kind of that beacon and that, the power of informal services or supports in addition to what the formal system can do, it can't be underestimated, especially at a time like the need for mental health services and the focus on mental health and wellness now is more than ever before because of the pandemic. And that's a great thing because it's needed to be an issue that's in the spotlight. But if we all rely just on formal services, there's long waits. So whatever we can do as a community, what we can do as family, what schools can do, is all collectively adding to creating a healthy community in spite of what we're all juggling as a global crisis. So I just really appreciate the spotlight on cognitive behavioral, but I want to remember that it's something that's a concept we all can master.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Terri. I did put in the chat box. I mentioned Urban Confessional. It's a free listening movement that's very popular in parts of the United States, not catching on very much in Canada, unfortunately, because I think it's a fantastic concept. If you do have a chance, go to YouTube, the second most watched medium in the world now. And if you don't have that premium membership, you'll have to sit through the 15 or 30-second commercial, unfortunately. But it's worth the watch of Urban Confessional, a free listening movement. The guy that started it has a remarkable story and doing some extraordinary things. Because he says, and I agree, that listening is love. So if you can have an empathetic ear, even from a stranger, you don't need a degreed person to just listen to you. That can be therapeutic and very helpful. And I would love to see it happen more intentionally, places like schools to get kids involved. He even has a training video put up so you can have your own free listening group. So I think that'd be a fantastic thing to see growing in schools where kids, I know there's a lot of peer pressure. Yes, Kyla, because I guess kids would be afraid to really kind of spill their guts with anybody, especially in smaller communities, right? So because you fear that gossip. So maybe
I love the idea, Terri, that you mentioned that the teachers can have such an impact on the kids. And you know, in my training career, we always say, oh, think about a time when a teacher made you feel this way. And everyone always has the time when the teacher called them out or put them down in class, and that, you know, can have an impact on them wanting to put themselves forward in the work world, or, you know, on years going forward. And I love that idea of, if you don't have CBT, but there's teachers there, or the accountability, or having a quote, or in the documentary, I think at the end they said, choose an idea and name it, and reset your mindset. So whatever you name, you get more of, and just setting goals. I think that really resonated. And they said, don't call your child lazy, change your mindset and think perseverance, think grit, and you'll get there. So I do think if you don't have CBT, there's lots of other free and resources, and, you know, always choosing kindness. I know Logan's grade 4 teacher was all about mindfulness and choosing kindness. And, you know, the quotes out there that say, you never know what someone's going through, so just choose kindness, because they could be just trying to hold it together. And I think that's true in COVID times. You just don't know someone's story, so just choose kind.
But it's lovely that it's in the mall. You're walking and there's actually a little sticker that instead of saying 6 feet, it says be kind. There's 2 books I would cite. One would be, we rely on Dr. Michael Unger's work around social ecological approach and the things that kids need. So there's a book called The 9 Things Kids Need, and it's a fabulous book. And truthfully, I would say there are 9 things we people need. So it's a great one. The other one that I've enjoyed is called The Beauty of Discomfort. Mm-hmm. And I think particularly in this day and age, there is a belief that the next generation's job is to pave the way to make it even smoother than the previous generation. And so what we've actually done is we've denied a demographic the opportunity to actually have to develop that grit, to have to work hard for something, because things are so instant and so smooth. So it's called The Beauty of Discomfort, and it's fabulous stories of people that have done incredible things. And because they either had a mentor or because there were all sorts of different examples. It was a lot about positive mindset and having a positive frame to work towards. But those are two books that I think are a really good read too.
Excellent. Nancy just said the documentary talked about validating your child's feelings. Kyla, has that changed how you talk to your kids about your own feelings? Interesting question. Yes.
Sure. I think so definitely the validation, is huge. And I think listening is a skill that can be learned, right? And we so want to jump into solving, but if you just are present and you can reflect the feeling and the thought, and where I went to a workshop at a school and they said, oh, the child could come home and say, I can't believe someone put this on Snapchat. And I would just say, turn that garbage off. That would be my, my fix it. Don't worry about that. But you have to say, oh, that's so terrible that this happened on Snapchat, and validate. So for sure that hits home. And even as someone who's practices skilled listening, you have to be present to recognize that sign to kick into that active listening, because you can get caught just autobiographically trying to help right away. Mm-hmm. And then part two of that question was, and how does that impact how I share? Well, I think I'm good at sharing my feelings, and I'm not afraid to say, oh, I've had a bad day, or I asked my husband if I could share this. He's more of he bottles it up a little bit and won't say anything. And so I've said, I think to role model, the sharing of feelings, so Logan knows that it's okay to share. You can share, oh, I'm feeling stressed, or so he doesn't bottle it up. So I think I do share my feelings, I think. And I always say, what you see is what you get. There's not a hidden agenda. And I look for someone to listen to me sometimes too. Sometimes you say, oh, I'm just looking to be listened to, not to be solved. And so I think listening is a skill that we can all benefit from at any age.
Yes, I think those old adages come for a reason, right? We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in the proportion that they're given.
And I would always write on a flip chart at work, listen has the same letters as silent.
Yeah, good one. Just some quick notes I wanted to share with you. We didn't get a time to talk about mindfulness because I'm a big fan of mindfulness as well. I put palouse-mindfulness.com. A gentleman has put the entire John Kabat-Zinn NBSR program, 8-week program, on palouse-mindfulness.com. So great resource there. 8 weeks if you wanted to participate in that with your friends and family. It's a really wonderful thing to do. And I'm really happy to hear that mindfulness programs now are being introduced in schools. We haven't had time to talk. We need to do another hour soon. Let's do that, because there's so much that we can talk about. Like I made another note, some stress can be good, right? We're talking about stress being something that we should be fearful about, but stressing is a muscle, right? That builds strength in us. So again, that strength-based approach, changing our mindset around the challenges and even changing our language around it. We can learn to be comfortable with levels of discomfort, as Dr. Dixon said. And yeah, it's good that we're all here to help each other. So thank you so much for letting me be part of this group. It's been fantastic. Nancy, do you want to pop back out and wrap things up for us? Or would you like me to do that? I'm happy to do that as well.
Okay, well, I want to thank everyone again. You have each offered really valuable input and your experience and your expertise. And on behalf of Gateway, I thank you a lot. Keeping the conversation going would be wonderful. Thank you, Terri, for making the suggestion that in your family advisory groups and so on, you share some of the content from the documentary. That would be great. And thank you, Dr. Peter Dixon, for your expertise too. It's just great. We did invite registrants to enter a draw, and it's for a telescope. We thought that in these days of no travel with COVID, why not? Sky's the limit. So we have a telescope draw that we're going to do. If Jay would like to pop up, and that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So the small group, we only had three people drop their names in the hat for the telescope. So we're doing a live draw. So I guess, Peter, would you like to pick number 1, 2, or 3?
Oh, okay. Number 3.
Number 3, Joan Clough.
Yay.
Congratulations.
Great.
So we have your email, Joan. We'll make sure you get the telescope.
Excellent.
Wonderful. Congratulations, Joan.
Congratulations. Stargazing. I love that. And I love that when you get out to the rural areas, you can actually see the stars. I'm here in Kitchener now, and it's the light. You don't really appreciate how the effect of light pollution has on the sky until you leave Huron County and come out to the city. It's like, oh, can't see the stars anymore. So yeah, enjoy that telescope, Joan. Lucky. Thanks so much, everybody. It's been fabulous. Wish you all the best. Thank you for sharing your insights, your knowledge, your experience. Thank you so much. I love being part of this group. Let's do this again soon.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.